welcome to finishing off part 2. In this video we are going to make our ground undulate a little bit more like this, so it's a bit more interesting, up and down, all over the place, and we will introduce a new mortar type, which one of our students, Robert Wu, has provided for us. You can see it proudly sitting on the top of the hill there, much more attractive than the one I provided. We'll also make sure that that mortar can be fired into oblivion if we hit it, which I didn't, and we will be generally tidying up and finishing off our work. So I will see you in there. Okay, so we've knocked off 3 of our pick and mix challenge. Let's look at the next one. Use the noise landscape function to undulate. Well, there's an example of me working too hard to try and make something fit on one line of slide. So let's go and take a look at the landscape king tool, and then click on the sculpt tool. So you go to modes, landscape, sculpt tool, and you get to noise eventually. And let's just do a little test. What I want to do is make this landscape less flat. Okay, so that is clearly too much undulation. So I'm going to turn the tool strength down to 0.02, quite low really. Noise mode, both directions, it's going to raise and lower the terrain. Noise scale, that's the size of the Perlin noise filter. Let's just try a few different things. So this is a 15 noise scale there, if you look at what it's done to the terrain. And then if I go to halfway up, let's just take a sample here. Very different wavelength basically of undulation. And if I went really big, then I think we'd find that you'd hardly even see the undulations. All right, well, I think that given those 3, I like the one in the middle about the best. So I'm just going to undo, go to the middle somewhere, and then I might just make the brush a little smaller. And then I think I'm just going to give the landscape some noisy treatment. Let's go ahead and do it. So do the same with yours, just make it noisy. You'll see these component divisions come up in the land as you do this. I actually may need a little bit more strength. Let's have a look and see what it looks like down at the ground level. No, I think it's okay. It's just giving a natural kind of slightly undulating feel to it. I think I'll go to 0.03, bearing in mind that's a 50% increase in the strength. That should be enough. And actually, why am I messing around with such a small brush? Let's just go to the biggest brush we can get our grubby mitts on. Okay, there you go. Oh, that's too much. Now look, you can spend a lot more time than I'm going to, because watching me do this is not the most amount of fun you'll have ever had. But the idea is to introduce a little bit of undulation, a little bit of change and uncertainty into the landscape so that we're not driving around on a flat plane. And try not to get too many artifacts of the tool in there like that. So if you have the tool too strong and you click around on it, you're going to get these artifacts come in. Let's try this. This looks a bit more crazy to me. Okay, and remember you need to come out of the landscaping mode or it just doesn't work properly. Grabbing my controller, that's what the clutter was, and here we go. There is a tank down in the valley there. Let's boost him. Oh, I can't because he's below my aim capability. Who's going to reload first? He is. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Okay, but look, you get the idea straight away. It's much more interesting when you've got this undulating landscape. So that's what I want you to do, is one of the things, is go and make your landscape undulate. Now, the other thing I noticed about my landscape, I think I'm going to go to a top view, is that if we look for the nav mesh bounds volume, it's too small. So let's just make that larger. So nav mesh bounds volume there. And in the appropriate place, you should be able to drag it. If you can't drag it like that, just go to its details and just change its X and Y size up appropriately. So let's just reset its position there. And then just make it bigger than the landscape. And that's great. Okay, so now if we go back to perspective, we'll hit P for show. And what that will do is show navigation. P hits show navigation like that in a single fell swoop. So how's that looking? Well, the problem actually is that the nav mesh bounds volume is not deep enough now. You see that the AI tanks will never be able to get into the bottom of these holes. So we do need to go and reselect the nav mesh bounds volume. We do need to pay attention to the 3-dimensionality of it. And we need to make it deeper. So I'm going to make it quite a lot deeper. And now we need to probably have a look from one of the sides and say, well, how's that looking? Well, it's looking okay, I would say. It needs to be lower as an offset. There you go. Now it goes into the bottom of all the holes and the crevices in the ground. Now let's let the calculation calculate. And it should be able to get, apart from the very steepest bits of slope, which is fine, it should now give us a situation where your AI tank can get from any part of the landscape to any other part, perhaps apart from these deepest crevices like this one here. So that should be fine. Let it finish calculating your navigation, and that part of the challenge is done. Of course, mine is very, very rough and ready, but you get the idea. The NavMesh bounds volume needs to extend in 3 dimensions into the areas where you want the tank to be to go. Probably not right to the top of your biggest hills. Probably, yes, down to the bottom of your deepest valleys, and that is kind of what you're looking for. And you can always verify things in like a left view or a side view, etc. So you can give yourself a little bit more Z height if you need to, and play around with it until eventually it fills into where you want it to be. Bear in mind in the left view here, you don't get to see everything necessarily, so you may need it higher in Z than you think you do in order to get the ground level in. Okay, cool. So that's going through, calculating one final time, and then that will be done. So while that's calculating, let's go look at the next thing. Make the auto mortars damageable. Okay, so when it comes to mortars, our students have provided some mortars for us. If you look against this lecture in the resources, we have a student auto mortars zip file. In there, I'm going to use Robert Woo's. The other guys will also work their different styles for you, but they will maybe need some changes to the import settings. I'll show you as we go through. So if I grab Robert Woo's pack here, I'm probably just going to export this zip first, actually, because if we don't, it may not drag into Unreal properly. So there you go. That's exported. Robert Woo, and there's some FBXs. So I think what I'll do is just grab the base for a start and just drop it into the mortar folder in Unreal here, something like that. That brings up an import dialog. I'm going to leave the import rotation and translation the same, but you may need to change that for the other models. Import all, and there we go. We have a different base to the mortar. So now if you go into the mortar blueprint, go to the body, you can now come in and say, well, okay, let's go find Robert's base, and there it is. Okay, that's cool. So that's done that bit, and now we have that base. And of course, you're going to need to go to the base and create a socket in it. Now I'm going to do this by eye. It's called Dome, the socket. Or was it Turret? I don't remember, but we'll change it if it's not right. Then you move that up to the middle of the base like that and save. Okay, cool. So next bit, we need to go down to the dome and we switch that out. Now, of course, Robert's dome isn't imported. So we just go find both the turret and the barrel, the turret being the dome, and you drag them into the mortar folder. Like so, import all, and then we've got those models now. Now on our mortar, we can go to the dome and we can switch that out for very fancy looking triple gun dome thing there. There you go. And we had got the socket name right, and it does look like it's sitting about right, possibly a tiny bit low, but I think we'll roll with that. Okay, and then the barrel, finally. So now we need to go find Robert's altogether superior triple set of barrels somewhere in here. There you go. And then, of course, on the dome itself, we need to go to the model. We need to go and create ourselves a socket called barrel. I'm not entirely sure where that socket needs to be in Robert's model, so I'm going to try just somewhere like this. Now, I'm not sure if Robert provided any instructions. Let's have a look. No, not a text file. So it is helpful, by the way, if you're making models like I think John did to make a README, which talks about the attachment points. But that doesn't matter. We can look at these attachment points. I'm super grateful for everybody's work. It really doesn't matter. And there you can see that actually it's the left-hand barrel socket I need to be aiming at, plus I need to be a little bit further forward. So remember that when you do this, you can, when you're specifying a barrel here, on your socket manager, you can choose a preview mesh, and that makes a lot of sense. So let's go choose that preview mesh there. Now it's much more easy for me to position that barrel much more precisely because I can see the result without having to flip back and forth to the blueprint as a whole. Okay, so if I now just go for something like that, and I can even preview in here the idea, well, I can preview certainly over on the mortar, the idea of rotating these barrels. Now, this barrel socket has changed, so we need to just reparent the socket there. While I'm at it, I might as well make sure that that's correct. Cool. Now let's just rotate these guys, and they're pretty close, I would say. Fantastic. So what else do we need to check? We need to check that the aiming component still has a projectile, which it doesn't. And we should be good to go. It's all facing down positive X. Let's try it. Let's drop, without P, I'm going to hit P to get rid of that in the scene. Let's drop Roberts into the scene. I'm just going to work out where the player start is, so it's quite close to us. And let's drop one of Robert's mortars right here. End key, remember, snaps things to the ground level. Let's play the game. Now, I didn't save, so the mortar blue, if it does crash here, which it shouldn't with all our ensure assertions, but if it does crash, I'll lose something in the mortar blueprint. That's okay. I don't like how long that took to run, so I'm just going to see if there's an ensure that's failed. Indeed there is. There's a possessed tank inshore that's failed. So I'll just get rid of the tank in the scene and just focus purely on the mortar for now. Clear this log. Play again. Okay, let's have a look. Is this mortar spinning? Oh, look how good that looks. Thank you very much, Robert. That looks pretty awesome. So the final thing is it's kind of hitting itself. And this is way beyond your challenge, Call of Duty, by the way. Of course, I'm doing a load more here. And the reason it's hitting itself is that the barrel, we don't have a projectile socket on it yet. So we need to pop a projectile socket on. I'll move that to the middle barrel and slightly ahead of the barrels. And that should sort out the firing. Let's have a go. It's looking really sharp as far as I'm concerned, that mortar. Boom, and it can hit us. Awesome. So finally, to make that thing damageable, all we need to do is go to the mortar, to the body of the mortar, simulate some physics. I'm going to give it a mass of, I don't know, that looks like about at least a 10 ton, so 10,000 barrel to me. Give it some linear and angular damping if you like. Leave gravity off because it's just going to sit on the ground, and that should be enough, just those changes there. You can see what I've changed, by the way, by where the little yellow resets are. They're the things that I've changed. It helps you guide your eye. Okay, so let's just save everything, play the game, and see what happens if I shoot now this mortar. Well, firstly, he's not doing so well. He's had a bit of a problem there, so let's just see if he just may have been colliding with the ground. Let's try again. Moved it up a little bit. That's better. And if I shoot this guy, what happens? Well, let's see. Boom, now it goes absolutely flying off. Well, that's not damaged as such, but he has gone completely disappearing. I think he may be too heavy. If he was lighter than that, he'd disappear at even higher speed. So you might be asking now, well, why don't I just implement damage ability in the same way as we did on the tank? Well, we could, but I don't think it's really necessary, because I want to show you the feature of Unreal that if this mortar goes flying off to a sufficient distance, like imagine it was only 100 kilos when we hit it, then see what happens. I want you to see that it actually does clear up objects for you when they get to an unreasonably large distance away in the world and there's no chance of them coming back. Let's see that in action. So I'm now going to try again, try and get a nice direct hit on this mortar. I think it's quite funny that it then goes absolutely boosting off. If you then depossess and then go and inspect by going to the world outline of that mortar, if you can find it somewhere in here, you can always do a search, by the way, you'll see that that mortar is still flying away. And the reason it's stopped and hanging in the air here is because of the linear damping. So if we were to get rid of linear damping on the mortar altogether, we could even get rid of angular damping actually. There's no reason this thing shouldn't just go flying off wildly. I was only putting those in out of habit because real things have those. Now let's just hit it again. Boom, and that goes absolutely flying up into the air. Very funny. Now what happens to it? Let's track it. Let's go to F8 to depossess, the world outliner. Let's go find that mortar. Ah, it just got deleted. Too late. Oh no, it didn't. That was a different object. Here you go. Now, here's the mortar. If you look at its details, it's miles and miles away now. Let's look at this location. It's just moving further and further away from us. And what you'll find if you wait a little while is that that mortar will actually get to a threshold where it's completely deleted. It's already out of range. It already can't find an aim solution. It's not really causing us a performance problem right now because it's so far away that it's not going to be rendering. It won't be able to find an aim solution. So we're just waiting for that mortar to get to a point where it gets deleted now. So I'm going to just use that as a very basic solution to making the mortars damageable. What I'd like you to do later, once you've done the next section of the course, or maybe even further content than that, is to loop back here and think about creating some sort of damageable interface that could apply to both the mortar and the tank. But that's a little bit beyond the scope of this section. So that's how I'm going to do it, and that makes the mortar disruptible and ejectable and not damageable as such, but we can certainly get it out of here so it doesn't do us any more harm. Just boost it completely out the world. That's a lot of fun. So the final challenge was to look through the Unreal coding standards and make sure we're complying with it. I think that in general we're doing very well up to the point that it talks about comments at least, which is all I wanted you to get to, just up to here, not even going into const correctness. The only thing is it does talk a fair amount about bools and what we need to do about bools and how you name Boolean methods. But unfortunately the engine itself breaks those rules. So in methods like this, if we just search for bool, get site ray hit location, it's not obvious that the bool is saying, yes, I've succeeded, or no, I've failed. But if you look at the methods that surround that the engine actually uses, they go like this, they behave like this, and they don't use the be prefix, and they don't start with is. So what the coding standard says is that properties that are Boolean should start with b, lowercase b, it's the only variables that do start with a lowercase, and method should start with the word is. But with these cases, we're breaking the rule with these hit location and hit vectors, because I think it reads a little bit better. And as I say, they break the rule in the engine themselves. So everywhere else, I think we're doing okay. Is barrel moving is an is question. B have aim solution in a property here starts with a B. So in general, I think we've fairly well complied with the coding standards. There's probably one or two little things that don't, but the point is to get 95% of the way there. And I think we've done that. So well done. The game's shaped up really nicely, and I will, in the next video, challenge you to come back here and continue to improve and develop this game once you've learnt some more tools from the next section.